Julian Huxley lived at the crossroads of biology, philosophy, and public policy during some of the 20th century's most turbulent decades. Born in London in 1887, he inherited a family tradition of intellectual adventure. His grandfather was the famed comparative anatomist Thomas Henry Huxley, Darwin's bulldog, while his younger brother Aldous would later write the dystopian classic Brave New World. From early boyhood, Julian was captivated by the natural world. Childhood notebooks overflowed with sketches of birds and beetles, and his precocious curiosity soon translated into formal achievement. He read zoology at Balliol College, Oxford, where mentors encouraged him to treat field observation and theoretical reflection as complementary pursuits rather than rival disciplines. That synthesis, empirical scrutiny joined to panoramic speculation, would define his career. The First World War interrupted Huxley's academic ascent, yet even military service exposed him to the practical importance of biology. He spent part of the conflict helping to develop treatments for parasites that debilitated soldiers in the trenches. The episode underscored how evolution was not an abstract chronicle of past epochs, but an ongoing force shaping immunity, disease, and survival. After the armistice, he returned to Oxford and later accepted a professorship at King's College London, where his lectures dazzled students with their breadth. He could pivot from chromosome mechanics to the courtship dances of great crested grebes, always circling back to the unifying theme of natural selection as an engine of complexity. Huxley's most lasting scientific contribution came through his role in forging the modern evolutionary synthesis. During the 1920s and 1930s, population genetics, paleontology, and field biology existed in uneasy parallel, each school pursuing its own vocabulary and methods. Huxley championed a reconciliation. His 1942 book, Evolution, The Modern Synthesis, distilled emerging insights from Ronald Fisher, J.B.S. Haldane, Sewell Wright, and Theodosius Dobzhansky into a panoramic narrative that placed gene frequencies at the heart of adaptation without neglecting ecology, behavior, and development. The volume did not break ground experimentally, yet its conceptual clarity persuaded disparate researchers that they were collaborators in a single grand enterprise. In so doing, it secured a shared framework that still structures evolutionary biology today. While most scientists confine their influence to laboratories and journals, Huxley sought platforms that reached citizens and policymakers. He wrote prolifically for newspapers and popular magazines, produced scripts for some of Britain's earliest wildlife films, and co-founded the World Wildlife Fund. His prose eschewed jargon, but did not patronize. He assumed that lay readers could follow complex arguments if those arguments were told through vivid images and crisp metaphors. This gift for translation propelled him to the directorship of the London Zoo in 1935. There he introduced immersive exhibits that emphasized ecological context over Victorian menageries, transforming the institution from a curiosities cabinet into an educational laboratory of living systems. Huxley's ambitions expanded further after the Second World War, when he became the first Director General of UNESCO. He viewed the new organization as a chance to align science, culture, and education toward the prevention of future atrocities. His inaugural policy paper, UNESCO, its purpose and its philosophy, framed the agency as an instrument for promoting a scientific world humanism, in which knowledge of evolution would erode parochial prejudices about race and nation. The text was simultaneously visionary and controversial. It declared that humanity was poised to take charge of its own evolutionary destiny, a notion that thrilled some delegates and unnerved others who feared technocratic hubris. Indeed, the most contentious chapter of Huxley's legacy lies in his relationship to eugenic thought. Like many progressives of his era, he endorsed the idea that genetic understanding could guide reproductive policy toward reducing disease and enhancing human capacities. Although he rejected coercive sterilization programs adopted in several countries, his writings nonetheless presumed that state-guided negative eugenics could curb inheritable disorders, while positive eugenics might encourage the propagation of desirable traits. After the Holocaust, any association with such ideas became morally fraught, and later scholars have debated how thoroughly Huxley confronted their implications. Some credit him with evolving away from rigid hereditarianism toward a broader environmental and educational model. Others argue that he underestimated the dangers of tying citizenship to genetic criteria. The controversy persists as a reminder that scientific utopianism can easily blur into paternalism. Technological futurism was another strand of his thought. In essays collected under titles like New Bottles for New Wine, Huxley coined the term transhumanism to describe the possibility that humans might deliberately transcend biological limitations through science. He imagined advances in endocrinology, psychopharmacology, and cybernetics enabling greater cognitive range, emotional stability, and lifespan. Far from depicting a cold mechanistic destiny, he saw transhumanism as an extension of evolution's creative impulse, an opportunity for consciousness to sculpt its own future. Although some readers dismissed such speculations as fanciful, they seeded discourses that later blossomed in fields as diverse as bioethics, artificial intelligence, and life extension research. During the final decade of his life, Huxley remained a public intellectual, even as Parkinson's disease slowed his physical movements. He accepted honorary degrees, lobbied for wildlife conservation, and recorded television interviews in which his eyes still sparked with curiosity despite tremors in his hands. He died in 1975, leaving behind a corpus that spans peer-reviewed science, children's books about nature, policy manifestos, documentary scripts, and philosophical meditations. The sheer range of genres reflects his conviction that knowledge is most alive when it migrates across boundaries, disciplinary, linguistic, and social. Assessing Huxley requires navigating paradox. He was at once a champion of evolutionary contingency and a believer in directed human improvement, a critic of nationalist dogma, and a participant in schemes that counted genetic worth, a popularizer keen to democratize science, and a patrician certain that expert guidance could redeem society. His detractors see these tensions as evidence of inconsistency or elitism. His admirers counter that they illustrate the difficulty of steering between nihilism and zealotry in an age when biology began to rewrite what it means to be human. Either way, his life dramatizes how science and values intertwine, each shaping the other's horizons. Today, Julian Huxley's imprint survives not only in evolutionary textbooks, but in conservation organizations, international educational mandates, and ongoing debates about biotechnology's promise and peril. He modeled a form of engaged scholarship that expects the biologist to be simultaneously empiricist, storyteller, and civic participant. If his career warns against the arrogance of assuming mastery over evolution, it also reminds us that scientific understanding can nourish an ethic of planetary responsibility. The challenge, as Huxley saw it, is to wield that understanding with humility strong enough to honor the diversity of life, yet bold enough to imagine futures in which life may flourish in new and unforeseen ways.